What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time for another game preview / game prediction for the 2023 college football season. And our next game preview / game prediction will be Week 12's matchup between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Tennessee Volunteers. Big-time SEC conference game coming up here this weekend. A lot of history here between Georgia and Tennessee here in the history of the SEC Conference, but also in the history of the SEC East. Looking at the series history between these two teams, Georgia leads the all-time series 27-23, but Georgia has won, 6 out of the last 7 meetings here. The last time Tennessee defeated Georgia in like a regular season game was 2016. They won that game by a Hail Mary like 34-31 in Athens. But the last time Tennessee defeated Georgia in Knoxville was 2015, 38-31. So yeah, it seems like a long time ago. It really doesn't seem like a long time ago, but it feels like a long time ago since Tennessee last defeated Georgia. But again, Georgia leads this series 27-23. They're on a 6-game winning streak here against this Tennessee team. We're going to give you a game preview / game prediction on this game, go through the stat comparisons here between these two teams, and go through also the game summary of what time the game will be coming up here this weekend between these two teams. And then also we're going to take a look at, the previous game results here for both of these teams in their 2023 seasons, break down their previous matchups, and then also we're going to give you the prediction at the end of this video and see how the game will go down. So let's get right into it here with our game preview / game prediction here for the Georgia Bulldogs and the Tennessee Volunteers. We'll start with the stat comparisons here. We'll start with Georgia first. They're coming into this game with a record of 10-0. This team is averaging about 40.6 points per game. That's a very high number for this Georgia team. I think offensively, this is a really better Georgia offense kind of compared to last year's. 504.8 yards per total yards this year for this Georgia team. So, yeah, that offense very explosive this year, as you could tell by the 500-yard mark and everything. Passing yards per game, 323.9 yards per passing. Carson Beck's been having a really good season, about 3,000 passing yards now in the season, and then also 18 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. So he's been taking care of the football. In the first half of the year, he was kind of up and down, but he's definitely been more consistent here in the second half of the season. And then you look at the rushing yards. This is a pretty decent Georgia running game. They got Donovan Edwards, one of their top running backs, of course, with 10 rushing touchdowns. Again, averaging about 180.9 yards per rushing. And then offensively in the rankings, again, Georgia very explosive on offense kind of compared to last year. They're 5th on offense, so that's a really good number there. They're top 5 on offense, which is a really good number for this Georgia team. And over the years that, Kirby Smart's been the head coach, Georgia's had a really good handful of offenses, but I think this has been the most explosive one, probably since the 2018 season where they had Jim Cheney as the offensive coordinator. But Georgia, again, 5th in the country on offense. And then defensively, no surprise here, they're 9th in the defensive side of the football. That's not the same defensive number that we had like a couple years ago, and probably compared to last year's as well. But still, defensively, Georgia is really good on the defensive side of the football, and they're absolutely dominant on that side of the football as well. So these are the stats here for the Georgia Bulldogs. Looking at the Tennessee Volunteers, they're coming into this game with a record of 7-3. They're averaging about 32 points per game. That number is a pretty low number there for this Tennessee team, kind of compared to last year. They're not the most explosive offense kind of compared to last year either. As you see, the total yards per game, about 454.8 yards per total yards this year. Again, that's not the same offensive, Tennessee that had from last year, but this is still a really good offense in my opinion. I know they haven't been looking good this year, but this is still a really good offense. Josh Heupel knows how to get it done. Passing yards per game, 227.5 yards per passing. Joe Milton, he's been pretty up and down this year, about 5 interceptions, but also just about 2,200 yards are passing, and then about 18 touchdowns as well. So both of these quarterbacks, I think actually Joe Milton's at 16 perhaps, maybe 18, maybe if I'm wrong or not, or something like that, but he's been inconsistent at times, but again, the passing games have been a little bit up and down for this Tennessee team. But the biggest strength about this Tennessee team is the running game. The running game's been their biggest strength this year. Look at that number, 213.2 yards per rushing. I believe Tennessee is like 9th in the country on, rushing yards per game. And they're also they're 1st in the conference as well in rushing yards per game as well. So, yeah, Tennessee can run the football pretty well, but will they be able to run the football against this Georgia defense? We'll find out coming up this weekend, but offensively in the rankings, Tennessee is 16th on offense. Again, this is not the same Tennessee offense that we saw last year when Hendon Hooker was at quarterback, but still, this is a really good offense. I mean, they're like at least top 20 on offense this year. And then defensively in the rankings, this is not a really good Tennessee defense. At least they're not like worse than any other teams out there in the country. They're 40th on defense. So at least they have some playmakers on the defensive side of the football. But again, will they be able to stop this Georgia offense coming up this weekend? But again, these are the 2023 stat comparisons here between these two teams. Stat comparison-wise, Georgia has the advantage in the offensive yards, except for the rushing yards per game. Tennessee has the big advantage in that category, but offensively and defensively, Georgia just has a massive advantage on both sides of the football. So these are the stat comparisons here. Let's now go to the game summary. This game will be at 3:30 Eastern Time this Saturday on CBS. The game is at Knoxville, one of the most toughest places to play in the SEC Conference. And as of right now, Georgia is favored by 10 points, and the over and under is at 57.5. Georgia comes into this game with a record of 10-0. Tennessee comes in with a record of 7-3. Georgia coming off a blowout win against Ole Miss this past weekend. Tennessee got blown out by Missouri this past weekend. And when I look at that spread number, Georgia is favored by 10 points only. I guess it's just because they're heading on the road here in a very tough environment. But again, I think that number should be a little bit higher based off of what we saw this past weekend. Tennessee absolutely struggled against Missouri this past weekend. I think that number should be a little bit higher. I would, take Georgia be favoring by like a couple of scores or maybe by 17 points, but only by 10 points. I mean, how is that even possible? Georgia favored only by 10 points going on the road here in Knoxville. I know it's a very tough place to play, but again, I think Georgia, based off of their performance against Ole Miss this past weekend, they should be at least favored by a couple touchdowns, maybe by 17. But again, if I was going to be like a spread guy, I would definitely pick Georgia to be favored by 14.5 or maybe by 17.5. So Georgia here, again, as of right now, favored by 10. That spread number could probably change by the time we get into the later part of this week. But you look at the over and under, they're kind of expecting a really low-scoring game in this one. I don't think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I mean, it could be somewhat of a low-scoring game. I mean, obviously, Tennessee is not really good on the defensive side of the football. Georgia is just really good on both sides of the football. Tennessee, though, they're sitting there at 7-3. Again, this would be a much bigger game if Tennessee kind of defeated Missouri, and they would be probably sitting there at 8-2. This will be Georgia's last SEC conference game as well. Tennessee still has Georgia right here coming up this weekend, and then they got Vanderbilt coming up the next weekend. So Tennessee trying to really pull off a huge upset here, which I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know what can happen here in the month of November. We've seen Georgia kind of struggle at times on both sides of the football, but I think Tennessee is not quite on Georgia's level. And you look at the FBI, Georgia favored by a lot in this one. Georgia is giving about a 69.3% chance to win here in Knoxville. And then Tennessee is giving about a 30.7% chance to beat Georgia here at home, which that's a very high percentage. It's kind of like the Ole Miss game, but, Georgia just absolutely rode in that game. Could this kind of be, similar to the Ole Miss game from this past weekend? But we'll find out. But Georgia, as of right now, favored by 10 points. And again, this game will be at 3:30 Eastern Time on the CBS channel like it was last year. And the Volunteers have home field advantage going into this game as well here in Knoxville. Let's go to the 2023 game results here for both of these teams. Again, Georgia comes in here at 10-0. We're looking at the previous 5 game results here for both of these teams. On October 7th, Georgia defeated Kentucky 51-13. October 14th, they defeated Vanderbilt on the road 37-20. That was a pretty close game there. Brock Bowers went down with an injury, though, in that game, and I think that's the reason why Georgia was so inconsistent in that game. They had a bye week after that Vanderbilt game, then they absolutely hammered Florida 43-20. On October the 28th, they also defeated Missouri a couple weeks ago on November 4th. 30-21, Missouri was actually very competitive in that game. Gave Georgia kind of a bit of a scare, but Missouri turned the ball over in the fourth quarter when the clock wind down and everything. And then you look at Ole Miss, obviously defeating them 52-17. A big win for Georgia in that game this past weekend, or I should say probably last night there. Again, November 11th was yesterday. So Ole Miss here, a big win for Georgia here, 52-17. Looking at Tennessee here, they're coming into this game with a record of 7-3. Again, Tennessee's been up and down this year. They defeated Texas A&M 20-13 on October the 14th. That was a defensive battle there. Texas A&M just fired Jimbo Fisher today, so that was a big news there, from earlier today. They lost to their rival Alabama 34-20 October 21st. They had the lead 20-7 going into halftime in that game. It looked like Tennessee was going to win the game, but Alabama came storming right back, and Alabama's been better ever since that loss to Texas. They defeated their rival Kentucky, though, 33-27 after that bounce back on October the 28th, and then defeated UConn here on November 4th, 59-3 in a blowout. That was an easy win there. But then they lost to Missouri 36-7. Got absolutely hammered on the defensive side of the football by that Missouri defense. I mean, obviously, offensively, they really struggled in that game. So, yeah, Tennessee's been having an up-and-down season. It just seems like when they get on a winning streak, they just lose the next week. Or maybe they get on a winning streak again and they lose the next week. So, looking at the previous game results here, combined here for both of these teams, again, Georgia has been inconsistent at times. They were inconsistent in both those Vanderbilt and Missouri games. If you look at that Kentucky and Florida and Ole Miss games, that's where their biggest wins come from. And then Tennessee, you look at them, they've been up and down this year. Again, only a 7-point win against Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a really good defense, but Kentucky, that was a big win for them, especially on the road, because if they did not win that game, that would have been a huge loss for them and a kind of an embarrassing loss as well. But again, they got absolutely embarrassed last night against Missouri, 36-7. So these are the 2023 game results here for both of these teams. Let's now go into the prediction here for both of these teams. So we got Georgia versus Tennessee here. Again, Tennessee has lost 6 straight to the Georgia Bulldogs now. Georgia has beaten Tennessee pretty easily now over the last few years. Tennessee is not quite on Georgia's level, to be honest. I know Tennessee has home field advantage going into this game, but again, Georgia is just so talented on both sides of the football. I just don't really see Georgia losing this game, but I'm going to give you a prediction here, how I think this game will go down. I think Tennessee gives Georgia a scare, here in the first few minutes of the game. Like I said, kind of compared to Ole Miss last week, I think Georgia gets off to a really slow start. Maybe it's the first half where the game is kind of close, but the second half, kind of compared to Ole Miss, I think Georgia's going to pull away. I think Tennessee is going to score more points than Ole Miss kind of did against Georgia. I think Tennessee has a really good enough offense to kind of compete with Georgia, but again, I just don't think Tennessee is on Georgia's level quite yet. It's going to really take some time for them to get on Georgia's level. But again, I think this is a game that's not going to be even close. And like I said, I think the game is really close at halftime, but I think Georgia pulls away kind of late. And also, I think Georgia probably wins by more than 10 points. And I think they win this one 37-20. So that's my final score prediction. I think Georgia wins this one by 17, the same score prediction in the Vanderbilt game. But again, I think Georgia is just really too talented. I mean, defensively, when you look at them, I mean, obviously they're really good on that side of the football. And the way the offense has been playing this year, they have been so much better with Carson Beck at quarterback. So, again, Georgia here, I think, wins this game 37-20. I don't think Tennessee, like I said, is on Georgia's level just yet. And again, I was very surprised by that spread number that Georgia is only favored by 10 points. I know it's a road game. It's a very tough place to play at Neyland Stadium. But I just think Georgia's going to handle the crowd pretty easily. And I think in the second half, Tennessee's going to run out of gas as well, like Ole Miss did against Georgia. So I think Georgia wins this one, again, 37-20 in this final score prediction here. And I think Georgia does pull away here late in this game here against the Tennessee Volunteers. But this is my Week 12 game preview / game prediction here for the Georgia Bulldogs and the Tennessee Volunteers. Again, Georgia entering their last game here in the SEC. They could probably finish out undefeated, but it wouldn't really shock me. It would really shock me if Tennessee pulled off an upset here this weekend. But we'll see what happens here. Again, give me your thoughts down in the comments below about this game preview / game prediction. And also give me your prediction down in the comments below. Who do you think wins it, Georgia or Tennessee? And also give me your final score prediction down in the comments below as well. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.